Rebuilt walls would not keep Winter's Edge safe alone. They needed weapons and armor, but had no smith. Leaf knew of a master crafter living in the rift, if Arlo was of an open mind. Arlo had heard the tales of battles that scarred the rift at his father's knee. He wondered how much of the stories could be true. The ancestral home to the pond scum, the rift had seen endless war between rats, bats, and frogs. Even the river refused to pass through it now. Its muddy bed was grave to beasts and boats alike. Arlo's foot slipped on something that was not another bone. Bottles were littering the muddy path now. Whoever left them could not be far. More bottles lay outside the forge, which was otherwise as quiet as every other dead thing that haunted this place. The pile of bottles was large, even for one who drinks like a merman, and it seemed to be breathing. Arlo was amazed the merman could swing his hammer, let alone see who he was hitting. A couple of thumps on the head soon brought him to his senses. Following him inside, Arlo realized this must be the smith. But his furnace was as cold and broken as the merman's spirit. The smith hunted bottles as he told Arlo of his woes. The frogs had attacked the village, kidnapping his wife and apprentice daughters. He would not light his forge until they were home. This was a problem Arlo swore he could solve. The smith took some strength from this. He introduced himself as Ron and flashed a grin, telling Arlo the frogs didn't take everything. While hardly a full armory, Ron had what was needed. This two-handed skull crusher was a gift made by his daughters. He put it in Arlo's paws in hope it would help save them. Together, the pair ventured on, heading towards the frog camp situated in the ruined temples. Top of the pile of corpses was one that was not Frog. The smith let out a desperate cry at the sight of his wife, lifeless atop the pile. He cried out again, but this time it was a call for blood. The old rat that stood before Arlo was barely able to raise his head, and his one cloudy eye felt as though it was looking through the Warden. As Arlo reached out his paw, the hooded rat slammed his spear into the ground, imparting his gift onto the young Warden. Arlo was glad to have met the old rat. Although he looked old and feeble, Arlo was sure that he was more than capable of looking after himself. Before Arlo could act, Ron was in the clutches of the enemy. The Knight card. Although considered a common card, in the right paws, it has a great deal of power. Approaching the statue, Arlo could feel the familiar buzz of power coursing through his body once again. As he left the statue, Arlo could feel a new power coursing through his body. Something else came his way. Tumbling down the temple stair, Arlo was met with another horror. The head of the smith. It was Arlo now who took up the battle cry. tried not to think of how many friends, old and new, lay dead. He still had more to do. Rita and Ruby were free, but without their father, there was little for them here. Arlo offered them a new home at Winter's Edge, and a forge to continue in their father's footsteps. The mermaids were grateful, and said they would find their way to the keep once they had laid Ron to rest. A stranger was meditating in the stillness. Arlo gasped. It was a frog. Before he could lift his blade, the frog croaked that he was an outcast, named Short Tongue. He'd come to rebuild the ancestral home of Bogmire Forge, a place for frogs who sought peace. No sooner had they agreed a truce than the two warriors had to fight. Side by side, the pair fought well, and the attackers soon disappeared again, back into thin air. Persuaded of the frog's honesty, Arlo left short tongue to his quest for peace. In return, the frog swore Arlo would always find a warm welcome there. Maggie was gifted at finding shiny treasures, but had lost her precious silver spectacles. Without them, she could not even count the claws on her paws. She begged for the Warden's help. Winter's Edge bustled again, but now with folk from across the north. All were in need of homes and work. Leaf suggested a new builder's yard would solve both problems. The yard needed a builder, and Arlo knew who to ask. Some rats protest at any change to their view. None more so than the elder at Mossbug Farm. If a builder was near, he would know. Short Tongue shouted at Arlo's approach. The tail spinner queen had taken frogs captive to feed her young. Arlo did not hesitate. This was a fate he wouldn't wish on even his worst enemy. They crept up on the eight-legged monstrosity as she ensnared another frog in her webs. The webbing was thick and tough, but their blades soon cut them to ribbons. Short Tongue sent the terrified frog toward Bogmire Forge. Injured though she was, the queen had no intention of giving up her hunt. Her young hungered. Another villager freed. They too headed for Bogmire, and Arlo wondered how many more frogs it could take. Unsettling place. It had to be the Queen's lair. Arlo wondered what his father would say if he could see him risking his life for frogs. dank and unsettling place. It had to be the Queen's lair. Arlo wondered what his father would say if he could see him risking his life for frogs. The tail spinner queen was dead, and the frogs were soon at work rebuilding the village. The warden was sure mammalian-amphibian relations would be forever changed.